Security in Drupal, what can go wrong, or a slightly different way of emphasizing word? What could possibly go wrong? Good. So I already took care of that. That's a reminder. Introduction about me, I'm Benji Fisher. I originally use just my name run together as my ID on Drupal.org, on GitHub, on GitLab. My avatar is the yellow pig, and when I come to conferences, I wear the yellow pig hat because I sometimes run into people that I've known online who might not recognize my face, but I'm glad I have the time. I'm a member of the Drupal usability group, one of the co-maintainers of the migration subsystem, or the Migrate API, and I'm a member of the security team. What just happened? I accidentally hit some key that needed to screw with. Okay. You can follow along. This link goes to table of contents of all of my slide decks, which for the past couple of years has mostly been versions of this talk. There are some others in there. There's even a slide deck on how I prepare my slide decks with Markdown, Pandoc, and GitLab CI. But that's for another day. So don't worry about the outline. I've listed 10 topics, of which we will cover 2, reader's choice. For the introduction right now, I'll talk about what is the OWASP Top 10. I'll talk about what is Drupal. And then we'll go into detail into 2 of the topics that are listed there. I won't bother to read them out. And then we'll have a little bit of summary. I borrowed some of my slides from Peter Boland's Cracking Drupal presentations, and I printed a bunch of text from OWASP.org. I have permission from Peter, and OWASP.org is all Creative Commons licensed. All of my slide decks are also Creative Commons licensed. So let's get into what is the OWASP Top 10. OWASP stands for, I'm closing my eyes, the Open Web Application Security Project Test, which is a nonprofit foundation that works to improve the security of software. And it is not Drupal specific, so one of the goals of this talk is to see Drupal through the eyes of an outsider, specifically asking how secure is it and what can go wrong. The OWASP Top 10 is an awareness document for developers. It represents broad consensus about the most critical security risks. And the list is updated every few years. As I was getting ready for this talk, I noticed an announcement that the next revision is coming up sometime probably in the first half of next year, 2025, which means I'm going to have to rewrite my talk. What is Drupal? How many people in this room already know the answer to that? How many people work with Drupal on a regular basis?
Yeah. Is this a trick question?
Yeah.
I think I know a number.
That's the thing. Okay, there were a couple of people who didn't raise their hands, but again, I want to get an outsider's point of view, so I'm going to sort of pretend we don't already know the answer, even though that's only true for a few people in this room. It's a content management system. What does that mean? Drupal says, enter data in my forms. Whatever you enter, I will save to the database, and then I'll use that to create web pages. Now, what does a hacker say when they hear that? Okay, start. From a security point of view, a web CMS is one of the worst ideas ever. Like, you're just asking for people to hack you. So just the first idea that pops into the mind of your typical hacker when they say that you're building a web CMS is that they see a form field, name, and you can type anything you want into the form field. And the hacker is probably going to type something like Robert, quote, right paren semicolon, drop table student, semicolon, dash dash. And the hacker is hoping that when you process this form, you'll do something like, assuming the language is PHP, create a string variable called $SQL, and the string is insert into students name whatever you've typed into the form. I'm sorry, name is the table label, and then values, and then insert whatever you typed into there. And if that is how you're processing the form, then when you insert this thing that's been entered into this text field, you'll get insert into student's name, values of Robert, close quotes, close parens, semicolon ends the SQL statement, and then another SQL statement, drop table students. And then what does the dash dash do?
Doesn't show? Is that what you're talking about?
This dash dash here. And it doesn't just,
It's a comment.
say again?
It's a comment.
Right, it's the comment sequence for SQL. So anything that comes after it is going to be ignored as a SQL statement. How many people have seen this example before?
Little Bobby tables.
Right, the actual title of the strip is Exploits of Mom. It's frequently called Little Bobby Tables. And XKCD is also generously licensed under a Creative Commons license. So that's number 327. Wow, that was a long time ago. So what else is Drupal? It's an active international open source software project. It's one of the largest open source communities in the world, more than 1 million passionate developers, designers, and so forth, all working together. And that text is cribbed from Drupal.org/about. Drupal takes security seriously. Security team is an all-volunteer group who work to improve the security of the Drupal project. Members of the team come from countries across 4 continents. I guess that would be North America, Europe, Asia, and South America. It was formalized in 2005 with a mailing list, so it's been around for a long time. It's had just 3 team leads in that time period. And yeah, since web CMS is such a terrible idea, it's a really good thing that we have a dedicated group. I'm proud to be a member of it. I'm one of the junior members of the team. We've been there for a couple of years. But we do have a group who are working to help keep it secure. Before I go any further, feel free to jump in and ask questions at any point. I take that as evidence that you're actually engaged, paying attention. And don't worry about the timing. So at this point, the OWASP Top 10, there are 10 topics. I prepared 5 of them. My original goal was to prepare 1 of them every time I gave a version of this talk, and if I had done that, I would have all 10 by now. I only have 5. So you can tell by the little icon at the bottom right of the page, if there's an arrow pointing down, it means I've got slides beneath that talk about it. So A1 is broken access control, cryptographic failures, injection, insecure design, security misconfiguration, vulnerable and outdated components, identification and authentication failures, software and data integrity failures, security logging and monitoring failures, and server-side request forgery. So, as I said, reader's choice,
Components.
vulnerable and outdated components. Great. So that is, whoops, that is A07. I have to
A06.
A06. It just Okay. Number 6, vulnerable and outdated components. What is the best kept secret in web security? The secret is that the most important stuff is the boring stuff, the stuff that you already know. So there's an analogy we often make with this clickbait title, How to Live a Happier, Longer Life, or Longer, Healthier Life. It takes just 4 minutes a day. Does that sound too good to be true? If you saw that link, would you click on it? You wouldn't click on it. People shaking their heads. So it sounds like clickbait, right? But it's true. There's something that you can do. Literally takes 4 minutes a day, and it will give you a longer, healthier life. Know what I'm thinking of?
Brush your teeth.
That's right, brush your teeth. That's good. Most of the time, I have to get a hint. I say, not 4 minutes all at once, it's 2 minutes twice a day. And then some people get it. It's the best advice you'll get today. Solve the flaw, and you really will live a longer, healthier life. So that's the stuff you already know. The important stuff is the stuff you already know. It's the boring stuff. I'm saying it's true of web security. So what are the basics of web security? Hygiene, use with passwords, have a policy. Use a password manager. That's much safer than sticky notes on the bottom of your laptop with your password. Keep your software up to date, which is mostly what this topic is about. Unless hosting is your core business, you should not be running your own web service. It's a great exercise. You learn so much. I still have a Linode server, or Linode. And when I started using Drupal, I hosted a couple of hobby websites on that, and great learning experience. Wouldn't want to use it for paid work. So, again, the middle one, keep your software up to date, is what A06 on the OWASP Top 10 is about. So for Drupal, you should know the schedule. Security release windows are every Wednesday from 12 to 5 Eastern Time. Drupal core updates will happen on the third Wednesday of each month. So Wednesday of next week is the 20th. There might be a security release Drupal core. You should all keep your eyes open for it just in case. There are also non-security updates of Drupal core can happen the first Wednesday of every month. So every Wednesday is a possible release for contrib modules. So not just security. Go ahead.
I don't know if this is an appropriate question, but you are a member of the security team, so does that mean you know in advance what's going to be released on Wednesday?
So the question is, do I know whether there will be a security release next Wednesday? I frequently do know in advance, and if I told you whether or not there would be a security release next Wednesday, I would be booted off the team.
There you go.
Minor versions of Drupal core are released every June and December. So next month, we'll have the release of Drupal 11.1 and 10.4. Right, maybe I should say 11.1.0, 10.4.0. Minor versions are supported for a year. So Drupal 10.2.0, Drupal 10.2 came out December of last year. It's nearing its end of support. Questions about that?
It stops support when people, is that right?
Yes. Drupal 10.2 stops support when Drupal 10.4 comes out. And since minor versions are released twice a year, that means Drupal 10.2 is supported for 1 year. You should know the channels. There's a page on Drupal.org for security advisories. Oops. I managed to right there. It's this page, Drupal.org/security. You can show only core security advisories, only security advisories for contrib projects, only PSAs. If we look at core security advisories, there are far fewer of those than for contrib modules. Last one was October 16th, last month. Improper error handling. Oh, yes, CD editor file. Oh, that one. Yeah, that was weird. There's an RSS feed. And again, you can filter either for all of them or contrib or PSAs. There's an email list you can subscribe to, and I think that I can edit my user account on Drupal.org without actually exposing my password on the page, but you go to edit, and then it's actually supposed to move at some point, I guess when they migrate user accounts off of the old Drupal.org. You can go to my newsletters. There used to be more here. The security announcements are the only things left on this page. And probably within a few months that'll be gone, as all of Drupal.org is migrating to Drupal 10. And there is a security team channel in Drupal Slack. There's an unofficial announcement at Drupal Security on X and Mastodon. Has Twitter been X long enough that we should stop saying what was formerly called Twitter? No, okay. X, formerly called Twitter, has at Drupal Security. You should also know the difference between major, minor, and patch versions. Any software that follows semantic versioning, in particular Drupal, a major version is typically disruptive. You will find that as you upgrade from Drupal 10 to Drupal 11, you're constantly waiting for all of your modules to be compatible with the new version. And when you update your website, it'll take some effort because major version updates tend to be disruptive. Minor versions are less disruptive. There can still be problems. And that's like 10.2 to 10.3, 10.3 to 10.4. And minor versions introduce new features. Patch versions should not be disruptive. Nobody's perfect. Sometimes we accidentally put in something that breaks your site, but some effort is put into. They don't introduce new features. They're just for bug fixes, and bug fixes should not break anything, despite what SVB says. And security releases are a special type of patch release, such as 10.2.9 to 10.2.10. A security release will only fix the security problem, so it has a much smaller scope than a typical patch release. And extra effort is put in to guarantee that it's not disruptive. So what that means is that if you've kept your version of Drupal up to date, you're on the current latest patch, and then a security release comes out, you have the best chance of upgrading without any disruption. So you should be able to update promptly, as quickly as possible, and keeping in mind the severity of the security problem that's being fixed. This is a commandment. It's not a suggestion. It's not actually a commandment. It's a statement of fact. You have to trust the security team. You have a choice. You can either read the security announcement, decide, does this affect my site or doesn't it? And if it does, then update the site. If you do that, then you're trusting the security team to have identified all possible exploits of the problem they're fixing. The other option is that you can update your site without thinking too hard about it. And if you do that, you're again trusting security team. You're trusting us, them, the team, to have produced something that is not disruptive. Which is hard, but at least we are modifying our own code, and we are anticipating the changes that that will make to the code that we deal with every day. I think that's a lot more reliable than the first thing you might be trusting this on. So we're much more likely to make a mistake in, oh, we missed this other way that that this flaw could be exploited. We're much more likely to miss that than we are to break something loose, do something destructive to your site. So yeah, the OWASP says that outdated security components are number 6 on the list of the top 10 security vulnerabilities. Most hackers are not all that clever, are not deep code readers. Most hackers go around trying to identify sites that haven't updated their software, that are still running software that has known vulnerabilities in it. And then the hackers exploit those vulnerabilities and face your site, steal your data, break down your site, all the things you don't want them to do. Hijack your servers. So the best way to protect yourself against that is to keep everything up to date. Don't just wait for security patches to come along and then upgrade from the previous security patch to the new security patch. But stay up to date, and then when this security update comes out, upgrade to that, trusting that it will be non-disruptive.
Benji?
Yep.
Am I right that when a security release comes out, that version change is always just the security issues? Like you're not also doing regular fixes in with it. It will only be the security issues, which is why it's good to be on that version that's right before it, because that's what the security issue was built on to be there.
Yes. For Drupal core, a security release only fixes one problem. It does not include any other bug fixes. And the only difference from the previous release is the fix for the security problem. We encourage module maintainers to follow the same policy, but the module maintainers for contrib modules, they get to decide, and they don't always follow that same policy.
Well, there's more than one security issue, but we'll be fixing the same one, I imagine. But it's only security fixes.
Yes.
You're not going to wait to fix a security issue for another security window just to only fix one security issue.
Yes, you're right. There are sometimes a security release will fix multiple security issues, but no unrelated bug fixes. The big change from Drupal 7 to Drupal 8, why Drupal 7 is still with us today. Drupal was basically totally rewritten using a lot of components from Symfony. The Drupal 9 end of life was scheduled for November, not December, but November of 2023, because Drupal 9 was based on Symfony 4. And when Symfony 4 went to end of life, Drupal 9 had to go end of life. And yeah, like I said, Drupal 8 was the first time that we built Drupal that way. And you were still learning things. And like one thing we learned was that we should not make a major Symfony upgrade a minor version Drupal upgrade. That was like 8.3 to 8.4, I think. Bad mistake. Going from Drupal 9 to Drupal 10, we put a lot of effort. I say we, I had nothing to do with it, but the Drupal community in large put a lot of effort into leapfrogging and going from Symfony 4 to Symfony 6. We never want to do that again. But now that we've done it once, plan is to follow the release cadence of Symfony. And as Symfony comes out with new versions, Drupal will come out with new major versions as well. So that is what outdated software components looks like through the lens of Drupal.
Is not what I thought it was going to be.
What
That was going
were
to
you
be
expecting?
upstream dependencies, more supply chain issues. I mean, I guess it's kind of related, but like the fact that you include some PHP projects and you get 10 dependencies, you can't, or like jobs to a project and you don't know when the last time maintained or updated or audited.
Okay, so the question is about upstream dependencies and supply chains. So when something that Drupal relies on has a security update, if it's just a patch update, then you can update the component sticking with Drupal, even if you're using Drupal core recommended, which most people do. If it's a major update, like a year or two ago, there were some launch problems with Guzzle, and the first one was just a patch update. We hadn't quite fixed Drupal core recommended, so we had to release a new version, security release of Drupal to be compatible with new updated version of Guzzle. And then a month or two later, there was a major version upgrade of Guzzle. And we again had to release a version of Drupal. So we handle upstream dependencies. If necessary, we'll make a release of Drupal. We even make a release of Drupal outside of our normal third Wednesday schedule if we have to, if there's a dependency update in one of our, a security update in one of our dependencies. JavaScript dependencies are just too hard to deal with. Mostly they're things that are part of the build process and don't get deployed to the live site, at least shouldn't be deployed to your live site. What's NPM? NPM is just sort of a nightmare from a security point of view. But seriously, if there is something part of Drupal core, JavaScript dependency that has security release, we will upgrade Drupal if we have to, just like that. Supply chains, an incredible amount of work has been going into the automatic updates initiative for Drupal. Am I right that the package manager is being included in Drupal core in 11.1? Experimental, hidden.
Yes, and it's very unique. It's not just hidden, it's also like there's a dev toggle that hides whether you can, like, even if you just went in and removed it from it, you still could install it.
Okay.
It's extra special hidden.
It's extra special hidden according to Nick. Okay. But yeah, a lot of work has been put into that. And supply chains are hard to deal with, but we're working on it. And that's not what I planned to talk about.
One thing I would say about that is everything you just said also applies to the pieces above Drupal. So PHP, Apache, Nginx, whatever, you have to kind of have that same philosophy of keep up to date with it, because Drupal doesn't necessarily, it wants you to have a certain version of PHP, but it's not going to start complaining if you have an insecure version of PHP. So which means custom modules and other things going on may still be, have an effect.
Right.
But keep everything else updated as well as Drupal, just using the same thought of, making it continuous and purposeful.
Yeah, I remember going to a talk some years ago, maybe at EdCap. Drupal is not your website. Drupal is an important part of your website, but Apache or whatever web server you're using, PHP, contributed modules, Varnish, CDN, there are a lot more things that also have to be kept up to date. So I think I've now summarized that comment for make the reporting. And that is why earlier on I said that you shouldn't be maintaining your own web servers unless web hosting is your primary business. You should be hosting your websites, anything that's actually important, not your hobby sites. You should be hosting them on a dedicated web hosting platform and let them worry about keeping the Linux. Didn't mention Linux. The operating system, the web server, Apache or Nginx, version of PHP, keeping all of those updated. And how many people host websites at Acquia? How many do you get about once or twice a week? You notice a planned security update coming down the line? Yeah, that's part of their job. So, as I said, there's usually time for 2 of these topics. We've talked about outdated and vulnerable components. What other topic would you like to talk about? Or would you like me to talk about?
Was security misconfiguration.
Oh, that's one of the blank columns. As I said at the start, I only have 5 of the 10.
Dope.
Injection.
Injection?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's wrong with me, but I don't want to choose again.
Let someone else have a turn. So from the OWASP page, what can go wrong? The OWASP page says user-supplied data is not validated, filtered, or sanitized by the application. And that's the Bobby tables example. You're getting user data, and you're not sanitizing it, and dynamic queries are used directly in the interpreter for sending SQL query with user-supplied data. Hostile data is used within search parameters to extract additional sensitive records. Hostile data is directly used or concatenated. I think at least 3 of those 4 are illustrated by the XKCD cartoon I talked about at the start. SA Core 2014-005. So SA Security Advisory. It was core, not a config module. It was in 2014. It was the 5th security advisory in 2014. And this there are a couple of ellipses where I edited for length, but this is basically the announcement that went out. Drupal 7 includes a database abstraction API to ensure that queries executed against the database are sanitized to prevent SQL injection attacks. Sounds good so far. A vulnerability in this API allows an attacker to send specially crafted requests, resulting in arbitrary SQL execution. This can lead to privilege escalation, arbitrary PHP execution, or other attacks. This can be exploited by anonymous users. Does anyone know another name other than what before 2014-005 for this? Right. Drupal? Oh, we're now calling it Drupal Getting 1?
It was the next one that wasn't quite as bad.
Yes, this was called Drupal Getting.
If I remember correctly, this wasn't marked high enough either. Initially, right?
Oh, it was.
Well, they were sending out warnings, like, we're gonna be releasing something at,
No, that was the next one.
it was this one. I remember sitting around waiting for this to come out.
I remember it differently. I remember it was obviously 10 years ago. I could be misremembering.
With your netcam.
So if this were to happen today, we would certainly have a PSA, public service announcement, ahead of time warning you, hey, you'd really better pay attention to the security advisory essay that's coming out next week.
That's when that policy started.
Now, you recall that happening 10 years
that.
ago? I don't recall that happening.
In fact, the email said it was gonna come out at a certain time, and it actually came out about an hour earlier than that, so.
Okay. So I remember reading this email Wednesday afternoon. It was a bit lucky. This was early in my Drupal career, and although I was subscribed to the security emails, good for me, I was not always in the habit of reading my personal email while I was at work, and I subscribed to them on my personal email address. So by stroke of luck, I made an exception that day. I was reading my personal email and I read it, and my jaw dropped, right? Arbitrary PHP execution that can be exploited by anonymous users.
And it was actually known to have active exploits in the wild.
Oh yeah, it was like 7 hours too before like,
Yeah.
it was everywhere.
So when I read this, no one had told me that it was being actively exploited, but yes, within 7 hours, it was actively being exploited. Just sort of automated attacks going against anything on the web that looked like a Drupal 7 site. So my response, I'm very proud of this, in a letter that I sent to my boss and the site owner, because of the severity of the vulnerability and the simplicity of the update, we tested and updated the site today. So the site that I was responsible for was fixed within 7 hours. They should have given me, a bonus for that. I think I promised in the description of the session that there are a few slides with code on them. Not too many. This is one of the ones that does. See the difference between vulnerable code and fixed code?
Great value.
Yeah, it's just an array of values. So both of them have a for each loop. In one case, and it's $I goes to $value, so key goes to value. In the first, it's data, and the second, it's array values of data. So in the second one, the keys, the $I, are just integers, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. In the first one, they could be user supply data.
Oh.
And in both of these, for the sake of the slide, I stripped the comment from both of them. There is an extensive comment. My personal opinion is that this line, although this is where the fix was, this isn't really where the bug was. The bug was the next step. I don't want to read that comment except to note that there's a 7-line comment here. I have added line breaks. The actual code is a single line, but it's keyreg replace of sharp concatenated with $key, concatenated with \b, that's the word character pattern, and intermediary sharp, and then implode of comma, array keys of new keys, and then so pattern, and then pattern replacement and subject is query. So in the query, you're making stuff in. So that line of code is doing too much. That's why we use 7-line comment. That line of code would be better as 5 lines of code the way I've written it. It's easier to understand what it's doing. And so one of the points I like to make is that things that are good for code quality are also good for security. So having lines that are not too long so that you can actually read them easily, good for code quality, it's good for security. Other things that are good for code quality, like code review and automated tests, are also good for security. So that was, as my email to my boss said, a very simple fix, and that's part of why we were able to fix it quickly. Why I didn't feel that it needed extensive regression testing to make sure that everything on the site continued to work, because it was such a simple fix.
Well, to be fair, in this type of situation in the future, I probably wouldn't do extensive regression testing for something that's severe anyway, because I'd rather a broken site that I can fix than a compromised site. That's my philosophy.
I think I agree with that. For the sake of the recording, Nick said in addition to the reasons I've given before, he'd rather have a broken site than a known insecure site.
And I will have a discussion with my clients.
Okay, any questions before I go on to the wrap up? SQL injection. Yeah, one thing hackers have been doing for a long time is, once they have one vulnerability, they know how to use it and leverage it to get more and more. I remember a few years ago going to a talk at Third Summit from a security researcher, really obviously very expert, who knew a lot. But he actually spent a lot of time saying, okay, now that they've gotten SQL injection, they can do this, they can do that, they can do this, and go on and on and on. Whereas I've always thought, well, SQL injection, end of game. You've lost. You've got SQL injection. But, there's so much more that they can do once they've gotten there. So let's go to conclusion. So again, I talked about the OWASP Top 10 and what is Drupal. I talked about 2 of the things on this list. Number 3, injection, and number 6, vulnerable and outdated components. We're now in conclusion. I have some references. I'll give you the QR code again in another slide or two. So obviously you can't click on the links on the screen, but list of all of my slide decks and source files for them, the OWASP Top 10 and the version for 2021. Time I can click through a couple of these links. So there's a page describing what the security team is, what we do and what we don't do. I'm happy to take general questions about the security team as well. There's a page on the Drupal core release schedule, which gives far more detail than I did about the difference between major, minor, and patch versions, and exactly what the schedule is. Current development cycle, the week of November 25th, that'll be Thanksgiving week, is when the RC for Drupal 11.1 is scheduled, and then December 9th, so early December, not late December, is when 11.1 should come out. And a list of all the security advisories, which I think we looked at with them. I try to be aware of my own biases. I'm biased against JavaScript. I want to deliver the correct page to the web browser rather than asking it to build a page from the pieces I've supplied. I'm biased in favor of Drupal core, and I often forget that there are useful contrib modules out there. So this slide's here to remind me that there are some useful contrib modules related to security. The security review, which looks for common misconfigurations. And someone asked about one of the top 10 in security misconfiguration. So maybe I should base a few slides on that using security review module. Paranoia, which I think is mostly for Drupal 7, no PHP eval from the web interface. Security kit, which bundles a bunch of different things. It lets you set a content security policy or CSP headers, origin checks against cross-site request forgery, some protections against cross-site scripting. Garter is a distribution with security in mind. I haven't checked on it lately. I hope they have a plan to convert it to recipes. And the two-factor authentication module, which I really wish had a full release. I think it's still in alpha the last time I checked. We can check right now. But, yes, Drupal really needs two-factor authentication. Yeah. Oh. It has a full release in the 8.x branch. That's good. And it's compatible with Drupal 10 and 11. It's only the 2.0 that's still not. Barter, yes?
There's only people 9.
Okay, so maybe I should remove it from the slide the next time.
But
I
it has
have
a
this.
full release. I've never seen before. What is that? How does that have a release on the release page, but it doesn't support 10 or 11?
That's a good question.
Doesn't? Is it because it's the distribution kind of sort of? Because, yeah, normally when you don't support a currently supported version of Drupal, it goes away. Right?
Well, where does it say that it's Drupal
I
9 only?
opened the source code.
Info YAML,
Yeah.
that's code requirement.
Oh, I didn't check.
I don't know, Benji, this one looks sketch.
Yeah, okay. I'll have to remove it from my slide. And any questions about things I've talked about, security team in general, security in general? Yes.
When you had that slide about the two-way of trusting security, I had never really thought about that much, but I guess I usually trust the first way and not the second. Do you know historically if that's been a bad idea?
So the question is about the slide I showed for trusting the security team. And don't actually remember which one I listed first. Right. So you say you generally followed the first one. You've read the security advisory and whether it impacts your site. I recommend the second approach. As I say, as a software developer, I just know that it's easier for me to evaluate the changes I'm making and how they'll affect the software that I work with every day than it is to anticipate all the ways that a vulnerability can be exploited. And we might say, this vulnerability can only be exploited if someone already has permission to edit content, view unpublished nodes, whatever. We may be overlooking something. Other questions? Cool. Well, thank you for coming. Have a good last session.